I'm Susan Saylor, and today I'm interviewing Billy Weil. So, Billy, I would like to start by how did you get involved with Pathwork? How did you even find out about it?
Um, Sue Van Doren, who was my therapist, my wife's therapist, my therapist before my wife, brilliant therapist, started doing lectures. And my wife told me about it. She said, let's go. And we went and we started going. And that's how I got introduced.
Okay.
And well, do you want to know how it went from there, kind of thing? Or do you
Yeah,
have
yeah, a little
questions?
bit. And like what time frame are we talking about?
Yeah. So this would have been maybe like 14 years ago. By that time, I had done the S training. I was a seminar leader for EST. Maybe, anyways, and and then I had completed my work with S training and was looking for something spiritual. I mean, that was my interest. I was looking for something spiritual. I didn't even know what that meant because I didn't have a very good relationship with whatever you would call God. um, but I just felt like there had to be something more. So I was kind of a seeker, not but a lazy one. And so these lectures were nice, but they were like, I don't really learn well with somebody just standing up in the front of the room and talking. And since then, these lectures have evolved to more multimedia and music and video and just be able to see slides and things like that and more and highly interactive. And Sue's a brilliant and lovely teacher, and oh my goodness. But it wasn't until so after doing that for about, I don't know, maybe a year, then somebody said there's going to be a workshop, Pathwork workshop. So I said, sure, a weekend workshop. And I think it was held in Joanne Gago's house. And I think Renee Watley led it. And it was mind blowing. I would think to a person, everyone would say, oh my God, I got so much out of this. It's like, so useful. And so I did another and another. And then, there's the transformation program, which is basically like 25 weekends of, training. And so we got into that. And then we got into teacher training and helpership training and helpership supervision. And now 14 years later, I'm a helper and working with clients and putting on my own workshops.
That's quite an intense 14 years.
Yeah, the main thing I really want to say about that is I never went into this to become a helper. I wasn't like, oh, I want to become a doctor, so now I'm going to do a ridiculous amount of education, which always terrified me as a kid. Is why I didn't go in for being a doctor or a lawyer. You said, like, you kidding me? Like years and years of, oh, like just get me out of school. But for me, I just loved the training. I just got so much out of the training, even teacher training. Like for teacher training, which was a year, at the end of which you would be supervised for a year, but you could teach Pathwork. And I found I got so much for myself in preparing a lecture to teach for someone else. There's that extra at stakeness, kind of twofold. One is I really and truly wanted to make it worth their time and to contribute to these people. And to be honest, I didn't want to look like an idiot that
Yeah.
didn't know what he was talking about. So you had to like not only understand the lecture, but have it like working in you. And that was the whole beauty. It's like, okay, now I've got this piece of whatever you would call it. I would call it transformation, um, as a result of preparing to teach a lecture.
Well, let's pick up on that word transformation. How would you say you have transformed your life, how you live your life, because of your work with Pathwork?
Yeah, great question. Um, Not like I wasn't a responsible, solid citizen before I did Pathwork. Um, but I never really appreciated the possibility of you might call radical personal responsibility, which would be the sort of attitude of anytime you're having an argument with another person, no matter, even if you're 99% right, you could find that 1% that you contributed, and you could unravel the whole argument just by owning that 1%. And by realizing it's like, holy cow, I'm bringing like life or death energy to, some theoretical conversation we're having.
But it is so uncomfortable to go in and find that 1%.
Yeah.
So how do you have the stamina, the courage, the belief in yourself to do that?
Well, it didn't come overnight. So we are born with the defense. We very early in life, we develop a whole defense structure. And and we live in a system of duality, right or wrong, good or bad, right? And if I'm wrong or bad, it feels like really bad things will happen. Even in a little silly argument about something, it triggers, it triggers stuff from childhood. And so you have to learn to develop that observer self piece, so we call it the healthy conscious ego, that can say, oh, I'm in reaction here. I'm triggered. And once I have that awareness, I can make a choice. I can go, well, I don't care. I'm triggered. I'm still gonna get mine, and the hell with you. But hopefully more and more you make the decision, no, I'm making decisions for love, not for winning, making a decision for unity, not for duality. And the more you do that, the stronger your observer self gets, because you have this benign feedback loop of, oh, when I do that, I get more love and I feel better. When I'm right and you're wrong, I don't feel better. I have a momentary, feel better, like, oh, I won. But then it's like, won what? And at what cost to my friend or partner? And this was so profound in my relationship. So, I mean, there's nothing better than to have, if you're after spiritual development, there's nothing better to be in like a primary committed relationship, like a marriage, because the two of you will trigger the crap out of each other and give you daily, if not hourly, opportunities to make that choice of, observer self wakes up and goes, whoa, why are we doing this? Or stay in the mire. And for me, it was so painful. Our relationship was so painful. And so our pathologies just triggered each other's pathologies. One little thing would lead to another. We were triggered and off to the races. And over the years, I mean, it's like now it's 20 years that we're together, and it's so easy and it's so loving and it's so sweet, because we just don't do that hardly with each other hardly anymore.
Well, you've been talking about what would have been my next question. What's challenging about Pathwork for you? And I think you've really talked meaningfully about that. But is there anything else you'd want to add about how Pathwork is very challenging?
I mean, the only part of me because I don't have a problem with facing myself. I don't have a problem. I'm happy to find like, oh, that, like, of course, there's this moment of, but then like, I know I'm going to move it and move that energy and transform it. And that's going to live with me. So that kind of stuff. And I'm also a feely person, so I don't have a problem with feelings. A lot of people are challenged with feeling sadness or anger. I actually did have a problem with expressing anger. So that was a big challenge for me. Expressing anger, discovering helplessness as a feeling. I always thought of helplessness as, well, you're helpless. No, helplessness is just a feeling. And if you feel it, it moves, it transmutes, and you're not feeling that feeling anymore. But I would just get mired in the helplessness. So just discovering that. But for me, the simple answer to your question is the lectures. Initially, they're so dense. They're I like to read fast, and you can't read these lectures fast. And it wasn't until I really relaxed into, oh, don't try to get, they're usually like 9 or 10 pages. Don't try to get through all 10 pages in a sitting. Like, read a paragraph or a page, let it work in you, let it reflect on it, see how this relates to your life. Like, and when I slowed that down, and now what I do, like if I'm preparing to teach, I'll summarize every paragraph that's meaningful at all, which will be like 80% of them probably in a short sentence or two in plain English. And then I can sort of just like take all those summaries, and I have the lecture, like I get it.
Yeah, that is a fine process.
Oh, plus the fact that, you could read a lecture 50 times and on the 51st time go, how did I miss that? I mean, it's common. It's more common than not common.
Yeah, because every time I read the lectures, I'm at a
Yeah.
slightly different place than when I read it before.
Yes, that too. Oh yeah, that's true too. Now the lectures are so easy for me to read, but starting out, I mean, some people don't have a problem. Some people, that's how they got into pathwork. They discovered the lectures, they started reading, and go, oh my God, this stuff is so great. And that wouldn't have been me.
Well, my next question, the most significant change you made in your life, I feel like you've already really discussed that. I mean, discovering behind anger was helplessness,
Mhm.
and learning to grow your ego so it could afford to look at yourself.
Yeah.
But is there something you would want to add to what you've already said about the significant change?
Yeah. Well, actually, what I discovered is that under everything is fear. And it's mostly like, for me, it's like fear of being voted off the island. I think it comes back to, that's a Survivor TV show metaphor. Uh, uh, the I think it goes back to like caveman days, where if you were a jerk and you got voted out of the cave, you could not survive. People could not survive as one person. And it's sort of like, I think it's the same thing. Like anytime any discordance happens, it could lead to me getting kicked out of the cave. And it's like in my DNA and everybody's at some level in some way. And so, fear is at the very bottom of it. Oh my God, I'm going to be abandoned, or I'm unlovable, I'm not worthy, which I think everybody has a little bit of. I'm unlovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. But the reason I got into this was to have a relationship with something bigger. I was in a 12-step program, I'm very comfortable with higher power kind of thing, but still, I say very comfortable. So because I had a bad relationship with God, I mentioned, when I was 12 years old, my mother died. And so, I was pretty angry at God. If I even believed in any God, which, went between either, if you want to believe in God, I hate him, but mostly I didn't really believe in God. And I still don't, know what I believe. It's not like some guy in the sky with a beard and he's watching your every move and like that. But I do believe, what I've gotten really clear is the divinity within me, and a sense of an energetic presence, a divine intelligence that I can tap into. And the place that it's most salient for me was, I wrote this book of poems, spiritual poems. And I was, many years ago, I was an English major, and I wrote some poems a long time ago, but I mostly didn't write poems. And I would go so when I would be riled up, I would go sit in my meditation room, and I would be called to write something. And I'm like, nah, I really don't feel like writing. And I kept coming back, and okay. And so I was like, it would flow out of me. And so like in 8 months, I wrote 64 poems in my book.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have taken me 8 years to write 64 poems. but I really felt like I got some help. I could really feel a divine presence. I could feel the ease of the words. And by the way, most of these poems have like 10 or 15 minutes of editing. For me, when I was in school writing poems, hours and hours and hours to try to get something, passable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty powerful testament to your connection with spirit.
Yeah.
We've touched on a lot of things in this interview. Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't brought up yet?
Hmm. Um, uh, Pathwork works on a psychological level, a transformational level, and a spiritual level. And you got to go through a lot of the psychological initially to get there. It would be lovely to go, oh, I'm just going to have a relationship with Jesus, me and, it's great, and bypass all the crap that we have going on. There's no development there.
Yeah.
And so, but the psychological stuff is so useful. So I would hope that, anybody watching this interview that's never really explored pathwork would give it a try. It's incredibly practical. Some of the lectures are weird. There's weird stuff in them. And you are not asked to believe anything. You're not asked to follow anything. You're not asked to join anything. You're invited to try it on like a shoe. And if it fits, wear it. If it doesn't, throw it away. And the stuff that fits, I think anybody would have this experience that allowed themselves into it, is so useful and so practical, even before you get to anything spiritual. And then the spiritual is, the ultimate goal. And it's a beautiful goal. And so I'm really glad to be a part of it. Feel like I don't know anybody that couldn't benefit from it. And I'm amazed that it's not, I don't know how many people around the world do it. I would guess it would be in the tens of thousands. I'm amazed that it's not in the tens of millions.
I am too, actually. But maybe it's growing. And maybe
Yeah.
this interview will
Yeah.
help grow a bit.
Yeah. Well, Pittsburgh growing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much, Billy, for being part of this interview.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.